guys! Wow, I can't believe you're here. I'm so honored and lucky. To be honest, it makes me a little embarrassed to know that you guys came here just to see little old me. And you'll have to forgive me, but I might not have the energy to keep this up. You see, I've always been kind of you could say, a nervous sleeper. You know how some people are nervous eaters? Well, I find that in times of stress, I tend to get a little bit drowsy.
Oh. Hey. You again? Figures you'd show up here. What's the matter? Don't you got a life? What, were you just bored and decided to click on the first random video you saw? 'Cause that's kind of pathetic if you ask me. Why don't you go outside, breathe in some fresh air, soak in some of those UV rays, heaven knows your skin needs it. Huh? You want to know who asked my opinion? You lousy mush for brains. You're the one who clicked on this review show. What exactly were you expecting? You know what? I don't care. And what's more, you're gonna have to get used to disappointment. 'Cause I ain't your performing monkey. And maybe, just maybe, I don't feel like doing your stinking review show. Now get lost. You're cutting into my beauty sleep.
Oh, morning already. Time sure flies when... Oh. Hey there. If you came here looking for a good time, well, you've come to the right place. I'm here. You're here. The atmosphere is perfect. What do you say, you and I? What? Review? What are you talking about? Whatever it is, it's totally killing the mood. Hello dears, and welcome to my show. I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, reading the stinkers and praising the masterpieces since 2012. And I'm going to talk to you today about heroes. Heroes, they come in many different shapes and sizes, and also moralities, believe it or not. Yes, for every hero, there is an anti-hero. For every golden boy, boy scout, there is a darker hero, an edgier hero who toes the line and is only a step away from being evil himself. And then there are antagonists, technically, who are tortured so you feel sorry for them. And there are also protagonists who really should be villains or antagonists, yet because the story is from their point of view, they are technically the protagonists. One thing throughout this confusion is generally true. The darker hero is more popular than the good hero. That's not to say that the noble, upright hero isn't popular. They're both pretty popular. So writers got it into their head, hey, the good heroes are very popular and the dark heroes are also popular, and what if we combine the two of them in one character? And so you get a slew of split personalities and evil twins and things like that. Now, this isn't a new development. It is actually older than dirt. But newer things have come out of this, like
till the day that I... Do you really think that I would ever let you go?
David Hasselhoff singing. And some heroes don't just have split personalities, but multiple personalities. We're talking about hardcore multiple personality disorder, which is actually an outdated term. Nowadays, the correct medical term is dissociative identity disorder. But that doesn't have as great of a ring to it. Which brings us right up to today's literature, multiple personality murder.
a dramatic monologue by Deborah Karszewski.
A monologue, you ask? You're really going to review a monologue. Yes, this monologue is not part of a play, and standalone monologues have the difficult task of having character development and a full story in a limited amount of time. Now a little background onto how I personally came across this monologue. I was part of my high school forensics team. No, not that kind of forensics. Forensics is basically a tournament where a bunch of drama geeks come together and have a late night performing monologues or speeches that they've prepared, about 7 to 10 minutes in length, in different categories, and compete against other students doing the same thing within that category. So I, being the masochistic high school student that I was, decided that it would be a great idea to spend my free time memorizing a 7 to 10 minute monologue. There are plenty of standalone monologues written expressly for the purpose of use in forensics competitions. This was one of them. And now I think it's only fair to take you through the basic story.
Our protagonist calls herself by 3 different names depending on who she is at the moment: Childish Felicia, Angry Pat, or Flirtatious Kaylee. Although each personality is distinct, there is one key similarity holding them together: shared history. Their dark past includes a negligent mother, an absent father, and an abusive stepfather, and they find themselves revealing the truth to a hapless psychiatrist and police officer.
This story has a lot of layers to it and fully utilizes them despite the brevity of the piece. A monologue, of course, is different from any other written story in that it is intended to be performed, not just read. Thus, the writing style is necessarily different from that of a novel. It takes practice to get used to how the characters must use exposition to set the scene because there is no narrator. In addition, things are told to us, not shown. Explicit stage directions are there to inform the actor of what exactly she needs to do.
This is written for one girl who must switch between very different personalities. At first, the switches are paced throughout the monologue, but near the end, the switching becomes more feverish. It has a lot of elements that make it a challenging piece to perform.
Even though there are technically 2 characters, the psychiatrist and the police officer, whom our main character is conversing with, since it is a monologue, we never actually hear what these other characters say. We have to infer from what the main character says and how she reacts. Now, the reactions are so big and memorable,
Superman will never...
but I feel like these unseen characters with no lines were actually characterized very well.
The writing of the different personalities was subtle. Since they have shared experiences and a shared background, certain phrases they used carried over from personality to personality. But because the personalities were different, they had a way of talking that was distinct from each other at the same time. This must have been a difficult balancing act, but the playwright performed it to perfection.
The story unfolds at a rather slow pace. It's closer to the 10-minute mark than the 7-minute mark. It's about 2 single-spaced pages long. It has time to build tension as well as establish character, and it uses every line to that effect. Now, I did think there was an imbalance when it came to which personality had the most chance to shine. Even though every personality had about the same amount of screen time, some speeches just had more substance than others.
Pat, the angry, sarcastic one, stuck out at me the most. That's a problem because no one personality should stick out more than the others. Pat begins the monologue mouthing off to the officer escorting her to the psychiatrist and starts to reveal that the character is in jail for some unspecified reason, that she makes frequent trips to the psychiatrist, and that she lives by the motto that people will hurt you unless you make them fear you. Already you start to see hints of her past, and the aggressive way in which she words things just makes her come across very strong. There is some excellent juxtaposition when she shifts to Felicia's personality. Felicia is a child at the age where she needs a doll for comfort and still is shaky on her grammar and her speech. Her innocence and Pat's worldliness collide in a jarring and sobering way as you start to realize what happened to make one person split into these radically different people, one hardened and rough, and one a sign of serious regression. Then from the childlike innocence springs yet another personality, and disturbingly, this one is very aware of her sexuality and flaunts it to hide insecurity. The switch from a child to a self-aware flirty woman adds another layer of disturbing imagery to this picture that is starting to form of both the character and her past.
I feel like I have most of the information to fill in the gaps of the things I don't know, but there are still some questions that persist, like how and why did she give herself different names? I imagined that her original name was Felicia because Felicia's part mentions how her mother always scolded her about pronouncing her full name instead of calling herself Leisha. Still, that begs the question of how Pat and Kaylee came to be named Pat and Kaylee. It's also suspect that none of the personalities seem to remember each other or what happens after they switch, but in the end they all interrupt each other to tell the story of their abusive past, picking up right where the other one left off. But that's drama for you, ladies and gentlemen. It may not always make sense, but it's wickedly entertaining.
Let all laws be agreed. I'm wicked and through since I cannot succeed.
Get it? I said wickedly entertaining. So I used a clip of, yeah. Also, Wicked is a play, so it's kind of a double meaning, clever play on words. Ha! Play on words! Somebody stop me. I'm a maniac.
She's a maniac, maniac.
Speaking of maniacs, I love how the audience is led to sympathize with the main character, but then we realize that she's not just a victim. She herself has committed a heinous crime. There's a reason she's in jail. But in the end, the audience doesn't hate her for it. It just leaves us feeling kind of hollow and sad. Sometimes it's nice to read something with no true bad guy that exposes the world as a place where things aren't always cut and dry. A place where sometimes bad things happen to good people and there is no silver lining. In a culture where our current media is overrun with happy endings, sometimes it's a breath of fresh air to read something a little bleaker, that ends on an uncertain note with no definable happiness in its ending. Even though a monologue isn't written just to be read, this one reads like a chilling short story, perfect for curling up under the covers, along with the collection of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories and maybe a gothic novel or two or three, and experiencing with the lights turned down low and a mug of hot chocolate close by. It's one of those stories. It makes you think about how far a human can be pushed before they snap, and what consequences can arise when a hero is also a villain. It also brings up that age-old conundrum, the fact that heroes and villains create each other, that villains are responsible for our having heroes in the first place, and heroes would have no purpose without villains. So, can there really be such a thing as
Good and evil.
Yeah, that. Multiple personality murder forces us to take a look at these questions, presents us with the situation, and offers no real answers. And it manages to provoke these existential questions in the span of 2 pages. That's more than I can say for some books that spout out 500 pages of basically nothing, really. Would I recommend multiple personality murder? To someone who is sick of the Hollywood standard ending and is craving something very dark, yes. To someone used to reading plays, scenes, and monologues, yes. But otherwise, no. Although this story has merit, it isn't something with a wide range of appeal. Even as a theater nerd, the stage directions tended to get on my nerves. They're the kind that specify everything even when they don't need to be specified. All throughout Pat's first speech, the playwright insists in stage directions for when Pat is speaking to the guard and when she's speaking to the psychiatrist. even though it's very obvious just from the lines themselves. It's also written in stage directions to be sarcastic when playing Pat, childish when playing Felicia, and suggestive when playing Kaylee. Duh! It got to the point where I felt my intelligence as a reader and actor was being insulted. Also, the story ends without even one hint of hope, and that can be a tough pill to swallow for many people. For what it is and what it was trying to accomplish, it was well written. And though the story was rather predictable and a little shallow, for a story told in the span of 2 pages from the point of view of one girl suffering from multiple personality disorder, I'm inclined to forgive most of its storytelling flaws. And so, all things considered, I'm leaving Multiple Personality Murder with a score of 4 stars out of 5. The first half is available in a preview online. The full script can be bought at the same website where the preview is available.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my first foray into the more dramatic side of literature. And now for something completely different. Kick-Ass by Mark Miller. Till next time, I'm your friendly neighborhood librarian, signing out.